Okay, so I'm going to start off with a little bit of a poll here, and it's going to be two questions. The first one is, what do you define as your primary rugby role? And the second one is, what are you most excited about since the return of rugby? So I'll launch that now and answer when you can. Lovely. So good mixed bag of folks here. We've got 6 people that have identified as match officials, another 9 that have identified as coaches, which is excellent. And in terms of what are we most excited about, a nice mixed bag of results as well. Some saying club days and socials, a good amount saying competition, and the majority saying being involved, which is awesome. So good stuff. So hopefully we'll add some value for your rugby lives here this evening. So I'll go ahead and end that poll, and then we'll dive straight into it. So what we'll try to do today is we'll have a brief look at the Global Law Trials. I sent a video, an email out just before we got online today, just going through some resources, clips, and a couple of pieces that John shared with me, just from what we can be doing, especially in downtime, preparing for that second half of the season. And there's a great piece on the tackle, which John will allude to a little bit later. So we'll look at Global Law Trials. We'll look at the key focus areas just as a check-in locally and see how we're doing. And then we'll provide a little bit of a resource update for coaches as well as officials, and just make sure we're aware of what's out there. So we'll start with Global Law Trials. Really, honestly, from a local point of view in BC, some positives are on the 50-22. We've seen some teams take advantage of it, and obviously the safety of the Jackler. We have had a couple of injuries, and I'll show you some videos that will try to clarify for coaches and officials of what we're really looking to achieve as far as looking after the safety of that Jackler and encouraging that contest. So I will now just share you a clip. So what I'll do is I'll share the clip on my screen. I will in the chat. So if you can find your chat button, I will put a link in for the video because it is a little bit choppy sometimes. And what I'm going to ask you to do is watch the clip, and then I will ask you a question in the poll, and then we'll see if we can stimulate some discussion from there. Okay, so we're just coming up on our first clip here. Give another look at it. So this is the 50-22. Generally, what we're seeing from teams is instead of just running the ball back into a static defensive line, we're starting to see our teams locally in their own half taking a look at the space in the backfield. And as soon as we see defenders rushing up and taking the space away from the run, the kickers are deciding to try to find the space in behind and get the ball into the 22 indirectly, so that can bounce anywhere on the field. It can bounce 4 times, 5 times, once, but as long as it hits grass and then finds its way into the 22, it ends up in an attacking line out, which is really positive. And we've seen a few at different levels, including Div 3, Div 2, which is awesome. Sorry for the delay on that one. So here we see a team going for that 50-22, the ball going into in goal. Another big trend, what we're seeing is the players are starting to really pick up on the fact that when they ground the ball in the in goal, as opposed to having the 22 dropout, and we have the goal line dropout, which is borrowed from rugby league. But at the same time, it's a huge opportunity for the attack. So that team that ended, even though they, so we'll go back a step here on clip 2. So even though we can see that the team in blue here, who's TWU, they're in fact going for the 50-22 and trying to get that ball indirectly into touch in the attacking 22. They don't quite get it right. The ball rolls into in goal. Doesn't quite go dead. The weight's quite good, and it's put down because of a good chase by the blue team. The end result as a goal line dropout does not necessarily mean it's a release of pressure right away from the defense. It actually gives a super opportunity for the attacking team, meaning TW in blue here, to have that immediate counter-attacking threat. So it's been a real positive across local rugby, in the sense that it's allowing defensive teams, to clear their lines in a sense, but it gives the attack an immediate counter-attack opportunity, as opposed to the ball being pounded to the other side of the field and us getting back into that kind of midfield kicking battle, so to speak. So a big positive from a global law trial point of view locally. And finally, the other global law trial, I should say, that has come up locally has been the safety of the jackler. So there's 2 pieces that have been included. Number 1 being the new definition. Number 2 being, what we can be doing to remove that person. So the jackler being a new definition in law, which is the player trying to compete for possession by lifting the ball on the defensive side, and what we can do to remove them. So the thing that has been taken away has been the collapsing on top of the player or the targeting the lower limbs. And here we can see the player in blue here as the jackler in a good, strong position to be able to lift the ball. And just for our coaches here, that's our definition for, off feet versus on feet. We make it very simple. Are they in a position to lift the ball? It's quite challenging to be able to lift the ball up if you're in fact not on your feet. So to make it easier for everyone, get into a position where you can lift the ball. That's what globally we're trying to use as a definition. So blue players trying to lift the ball. what we're starting to see here is the yellow player who has opted, well, they've lost the shoulder to chest battle, so they've opted for the body roll as opposed to the low to high clean out, which is totally legal. Nothing's changed around that. What ended up happening was they're unable to move the jackler, so they have to slide further up the body and onto the lower limbs, and eventually they end up collapsing right onto that lower limb, and that planted leg ends up being quite compromised. So I'll show it to you again in real time, and then once again in slow motion. So that attack of the lower limbs doesn't allow the jackler to really get their opportunity to contest the ball safely. So again, no problems here, but as soon as that failure to remove the player via the body roll becomes a collapse onto the lower limb, it ends up in a dangerous situation. So nothing more than a penalty as far as World Rugby is concerned, but it's something that coaches, players, and officials have to be aware of, and it might be just about a change of technique or maybe a change of awareness and attitude in that area, just so that we can honor the fact that we want jacklers to be there, we want the contest, so we have to make sure that we look after them in that space, which is the rationale for the global law trial. So I will launch a poll here to make sure we're on the same page. Good stuff. So yeah, just a couple of questions. So a kicker receives a pass 10 meters inside his own half and tries to go for a 50-22, as it's known now, after a scrum that started 1 meter in the attacking half. If the ball goes indirectly into touch inside the attacking 22, does the kicker's team gain the throw into the line out? So the actual answer is no, because effectively the possession, just like on the 22-meter law that was brought in a number of years ago, it's the origin of the possession. So if that final ruck or that set piece originated inside the 22, the ball being kicked directly out is okay. Same concept applies to the 50-22. If the final ruck or the set piece originated on or inside the 50, so on the defensive side of halfway, and the ball being kicked indirectly in a touch in the attacking 22 would result in the attacking lineout. So effectively, if the ball is passed back over the halfway line, the 50-22 does not apply. So a big awareness piece for coaches, players, and officials, and something for us to communicate actively is when the ball's passed back, the 50-22 does not apply. The result isn't as grave, obviously, as getting the 22 law wrong, because obviously if you're not kicking it directly into touch, you're not going to have a problem where you have no gaining ground. It's just a concept of, you won't get that reward of the attacking throw into the lineout. The second piece, what's changed with the safety of the jackler? Yeah, 100%. The new definition, the jackler is now in law, which is fantastic. And it's now illegal to target the lower limbs or collapse on the jackler. And just from a clarity point of view, there, particularly with the last clip I showed involving the blue player being taken out by the lower limbs by the yellow player, from Woldragti's point of view, it's penalty. As long as you enter through the gate, use your arms, there's no higher sanction for that. So that's why we really need to get on the same page as administrators, coaches, players, and officials, because it's really a change in practice and in technique and in mentality that we need. Because obviously, if there's no deterrent, such as a red card, it's not just the officiating that's going to change the behavior, so to speak. So before I move on, I just want to introduce, for those of you who have not had a chance to meet him, John Tate, our new our technical director at BC Rugby. John, would you care to weigh in on anything global law trials before we move on? I don't know if John's able to unmute himself at the moment, but that's not a problem. Okay, we'll move on. We'll get John's thoughts a little bit later. Right. So in a nutshell, yeah, that 50-22 law piece, which is great. From a local point of view, we've seen a lot of teams take advantage of it. The why, that's the big one, is just rewarding that precise kicking, as well as encouraging players to drop into the backfield and creating a few more gaps in that defensive line, and ultimately reducing those big collisions in the open field is what World Rugby, the lawmakers, want to achieve. And we'll see whether or not the law trial will hang on. It's in for this season, and we'll see if that survives next year. But effectively, what does it mean? As long as players and coaches are realizing that there is space, and we can take advantage of it in terms of space and behind, and kicking into that space in order to get that big reward, which is an attacking throw into the lineout. Fantastic. Or if the backfield is completely covered, that means there's space to mount counterattacks. So hopefully that can be something we can continue to take advantage of on the local level. Safety of the jackler, as we alluded to before. Again, we just want to encourage this contest around the breakdown, especially. That jackler adds so much value. It encourages teams to add more resources to the breakdown to clean out. Conversely, it encourages quicker ball, because if there's a jackal that's a clean jackal and they're cleaned out, the ball's either quick or it's turned over. So protecting that person and encouraging their ability to go in there with confidence and to compete, without having catastrophic injuries, especially in the ankle and knee region, will add value. And again, from an attacking point of view, the more people that try to jackal, the less people that are standing waiting in the defensive line, and the more space that's available to attack. Right. Oh, so just a pause for now. Is there any questions or concerns on the global law trials as we've seen them so far this season, before we get into focus areas? Feel free to unmute yourself or fire a question into the chat. All right. So yeah, moving on to the fun stuff, our key focus areas. So just as a nutshell, breakdown, set piece, space, foul play, those are our broad key focus areas, for lack of a better term. And then within those, just using breakdown as an example, we look at the tackler, arriving player, entry on both sides, the role of the jackler and of the cleanout, and effectively, we just try to be on the same page as per what those mean, first and foremost, and how we want those to be coached and officiated, so that everyone can feel comfortable and, compete at the best level they can. The outcomes that we want to achieve, so the key focus areas are mainly a process, so that we can get, effectively, to borrow a World Rugby phrase, safety, speed, and space. That has been the fruit of the pandemic, so to speak. The law trials group, as well as the player safety review committee, has come up with these three themes as, objectives for not only looking after players, but making our product more enjoyable for participants and spectators. What have we noticed here? There's a couple of things affecting, that outcome of safety, speed, and space, and not all negative. There's been some good successes locally, but effectively, tackler, jackler, and cleanout, those are kind of our bread and butter in BC. And how can we move towards getting better pictures from that tackler, better efforts from the jackler, and better technique from the cleanout. That's kind of point number one, from feedback from players and coaches and officials, of if we can get on the same page in those areas, we might actually have some really good success in the second half of the season. So I will share with you a few clips, and I'm going to ask you in the chat to actually weigh in on what your decision is. So I will pull up the first clip, and what I'm going to ask you to do in the chat is type in the word that jumps out the most to you. So if it's a problem with the tackler, you can type in tackler. If it's a problem with the jackler, you can type in jackler. If it's a problem with space or offside, you can type in space or offside. If it's a problem with the ball carrier, you can type in holding. I just want to get a sense for what we're seeing in these sometimes complex pictures. Oh, and apologies, I will share this into the chat quickly, just in case you want to have a look at your own pace. So that's one look. I will play it one more time on my screen. And again, you can go back and have a look on your own screen. I put the link in the chat. And what we're looking to do is type in one word, what jumps out at us: tackler, ball carrier, offside, anything that comes to mind. All right. So just looking at the chat, as everyone can see, so a couple issues with tackler, and then I like Connor. You kind of diverged a little bit and looked at offside, and Kenny's looking to play on, which is really good. So let's look at this and we can peel back a little bit. So looking at our key focus areas, if I just share my screen again for you, apologize, just bear with me if you could. Thank you. Lovely. Okay, so if we go back to our basic definitions for tackler, so obviously our key focus area is the tackler. What we want, and this is based off of what World Rugby said and what we've learned from talking to players, coaches just over the years, is how can we boil this down to, instead of law, which is the tackler must roll away, which is quite roll away is quite a black and white term, but as we know, rugby, we get a lot of pictures in the gray. So how can we make those gray pictures more consistent and more clear for everyone to understand, and hopefully reduce some frustration from all stakeholders' point of view? We come up with this key actionable, which is not in the way of ball delivery. So sometimes it's best for the tackler not to move at all. Sometimes it's best for the tackler just to lift an arm up. Sometimes it's best for the tackler to move east-west, as our colleagues in New Zealand love to say during Super Rugby Aotearoa. So not being in the way of ball delivery is kind of an acceptable definition that everyone can understand. So what does that mean for officials? Well, it means we don't necessarily penalize them straight away if we think they're in the way. We have to do, two things. We have to observe, then we have to decide. So we have to observe, well, are they on the wrong side? Are they a potential threat of being in the way? If so, then we have to effectively decide whether or not they impede the delivery of the ball or the cleanout, or the speed of the ball. So if yes, obviously it's penalty. If not, it's play on. So going back to this clip, what I really enjoyed is we've got, so first of all, let's honor the one comment we had about offside play space, which is what we'll go on before. I don't mind that because, even though we don't have a clear idea of the hindmost foot, we have this player here who maybe doesn't start offside, so maybe that's an issue primarily, and we'll get to space later, but I do like that kind of divergent thinking. But here, looking at the type of tackle, and John, maybe you might want to weigh in on the type of tackle in a second, but that kind of landing on the ground, dragging the player down desperately, and on top of oneself. If we're refereeing this, I know for me personally, I'm looking at this player who's making this type of tackle, and I'm automatically looking at them as a liability, just because they're probably going to end up in an awkward situation. They end up, there ends up being a player who goes over top, manages to clean, the 9 goes around, and the ball's played away. So we have a couple of options there. So Kenny, although his majority of experiences in the coaching world, I appreciate the, I guess, coaching or refereeing side of it, which is you can play on 100%. Play on is an option available to the referee here. If we look at the ball was able to get played out. But this is something we need to be aware of from a over and over and over again perspective, is if players and coaches can focus on, and that tackle ready piece talks about proximity, talks about getting your legs closer. Here, the defender really doesn't do that. And he ends up having to drop to the ground, kind of desperately make this tackle, and ends up lying, for lack of a better term, on the wrong side underneath the tackled player. And really, if it's if it's a matter of seconds or inches, if his leg or hand gets in the way and we see this play shut down, if you're the red team, you're feeling pretty aggrieved over here. So there's lots of ways to look at it, but what can we make it simple? We can get rid of this tackler. So from an officiating point of view, we get rid of the tackler. We prevent all kinds of problems like players having to go around the side, ball carriers having to do extra rolls, all of these kind of secondary issues that happen from just one thing which didn't happen, which had to, which was the tackler not being in the way. So I'm not necessarily suggesting this tackler has to do something more on the ground here. The piece that we need to address is how can we make this tackler in a better position to be successful in the first place? So sometimes that's life. We get caught in bad positions. But if we really work on that tackle technique, and again, this has nothing to do with the individual picture that we're seeing here, more as a trend, we are starting to see a lot of tacklers who are not necessarily trying to slow the game down, but they're making those soak tackles, or they're just desperately hanging on to people, as opposed to getting their feet close enough and finishing on top in a position where they're in control. And then that makes it easier to, roll away, as the law says, or not be in the way, if that makes sense. So that is our first issue, sorry, not issue, so to speak, but trend that's come up over the return to rugby in the fall. And it comes down to, officials being smart on, when to penalize that or when to play on. And sometimes play on is the right option, but we have to be aware of, if we're often debating that with ourselves, maybe we're being too lenient in that area. From a playing and coaching point of view, are we coaching the right technique? If your players are tending to end up in bad positions, getting caught, getting trapped underneath bodies, hey, what can we do to put them in better positions to be successful and be in dominant body positions as opposed to passive ones? So moving on to our second area. So looking at this last segment of play here in clip 2, there's a couple of pieces here. Obviously, the play ends up in a not rolling away decision, but our issue is we don't really have, and neither team's either going anywhere. We've got a lot of congestion here from White, and we're not even really concerned with the player who jumps across. It's just that space piece. If we're debating, like who's, are they onside? Are they offside? Really what it comes down to is, are they in a position where they're clearly where they're clearly onside? So that's our second area that we highlighted. And just to go back to our key focus areas, are we, apologies. So are we really onside to begin with? So it's not necessarily, are we offside, yes or no? It's, are we clearly onside? Are we clearly after the last feet when we're lining up? And what that means from a refereeing point of view is, if we're debating whether people are onside or not, maybe we need to have a higher expectation for what we're seeing. And from a playing and coaching standpoint, it's, are you wanting to be pushed back by referees? Are you wanting to have to always check your run, or are you wanting to employ line speed? And John, you can probably speak to it better than I can, but line speed is about connectivity just as much as it about momentum. And if you're always being, second guessing yourself about where you're starting, it's really hard to make a cohesive effort to take space up the field. And it comes down to, can we set up, clearly onside and clearly behind where that last foot is? And even if that means an extra half step back to start with, does that generate more momentum, which gives the defense a better opportunity to make that, gain line negative tackle, which is what most defensive coaches want.
If I could jump in there, Chris, I would just, I'd add that, coaches are often guilty of focusing on, trying to get line speed because it is so effective in creating some, unforced errors and turnovers. But you already said it, the most important part is the connection piece. Shooting up and having 6 different defensive lines just opens up more gaps for a good attacking side. So, I would totally agree with that. The connection piece first, and the connection, if it's being set off of the pillars or second or third defender, that person's first point of should be just to set the line, and then everybody's taking it off of that one, which, and I think it's a good habit to actually give a half a meter in training, that you're pushing them back. So then when they get a little bit of fatigue and they maybe don't get back that half step, they're still somewhat onside, or it's in that debatable position.
And John, what, you talked about the pillar. So is that the person you're generally expecting to set to be aware of where that onside line is?
Generally the first person around the ruck, at the back of the ruck, if they're looking to contest for a ball. So I think it makes a lot of sense to have them set the line, or someone, within maybe 2 or 3 people around the ruck off of them, because they have the best vantage point of what the actual hind foot of the ruck is. I think in particular sevens, they don't really police the hind foot as tight as they could. I think they let a lot of the halfway up the ruck and those long placements where they're standing at the hips of the person placing the ball. So that's kind of relevant. And then, when you get some inconsistencies in the call and stuff, but definitely players and coaches have a role to play on that, just to make it clear for everybody, a little bit more enjoyable.
Well, and that's a bit of a preview into our last segment that we'll get into for this evening. But yeah, making it more enjoyable. If the defense can, feel comfortable coming up and not worrying about, am I offside, am I onside? They feel confident in what they're trying to do, and the attack doesn't feel, as if they're congested, especially in that pillar. Talked about sevens, but especially in 15s. If that 9 is not able to operate the way they want to, if they want to run, or if they want to pass, or if they want to, have a snipe and then a pass, they have to be able to have that space to do so. And it makes it a lot more enjoyable when they can. And even from a defensive point of view, if you give that 9 the opportunity to do what they want to do, but you generate great momentum off the line, you smash them behind the gain line. It can be great from a defensive point of view as well. So just moving into our next bit on space, as John says, like if we work from the inside out and we're set up, clearly on side, it just makes it a lot more enjoyable for both sides. So we will bear with me a second. It's going to start a different screen share with you all here. And I will ask you a question on clip number 3, which again has to do with space. So if you have that playlist up on your screen already, it's clip number 3 in the key focus areas updates playlist. So in your chat box, I will ask you to, after watching this clip once or twice if you need to, what is jumping out at you? So in 1 or 2 words, so is it offside play? Is it a tackler issue? Is it foul play? Anything at all? Just fire it into the chat at your leisure. Oops, apologies. I'll play it for you one more time. All right, what are we seeing here? What is the decisive factor in that clip? And don't necessarily think refereeing and decisions, but if something jumped out at you that was exciting, entertaining, fire that into the chat as well. If you have a comment or a question, don't be shy. Okay, so before we get into particulars on this clip, let's just go back to our focus areas and our definitions for a moment, if we could. So just working from the left-hand side here, so obviously those pillars is, apologies, let me go back to this screen. There we go, it's a better view for everyone. Okay, so when we go back to space, if I could, there we go. We go back to space. So obviously the pillar, as John alluded to before, that inside defender, are they clearly on side? Hands and feet, clearly after the last feet, all that stuff. The defensive line, sets up off of that. And are they clearly behind, that space that the pillar is established? So keeping that in mind, the next step of the process being the line speed timing, really referees, like if the shooters start on side, if their timing is a little bit off, if they're half a second, before the ball is lifted, by the way, that's when the ball's out internationally, like when the ball's off the ground. So even if they're a little bit early, the expectation is that they're forgiven for the fact that they've started onside, because that's generally not our issue. Our issue is never timing. Our issue is where did we start from? Where are those starting blocks? So if we go back to the clip now with those things in mind, I will ask you to watch it again. And if your mind's changed with those things, don't necessarily worry about the timing. Just, we're going to have a shooter coming through, obviously, as we all picked up. But, are we happy with where they started from? So I'll show it to you again. And I'll freeze it. And once again. So our shooter is going to be the player in the head tape over here. Okay, so again, it's just from a playing, coaching, officiating standpoint, I'm not interested so much in people's answers, whether it's, one way or the other way. And again, every clip is different, every play is different. Where we need to start getting on the same page is, are we asking the right questions? Are we speaking the same language? So if one person says, like we did in the chat, that, hey, this person started onside and they're fine, then that's great. Because that's an opinion. If you think they started onside and you're asking the right questions, hey, in my view, they started onside. Both their feet were behind the last feet of the pillar, which we can define the pillar as the person who is closest to the ruck here. So we've got our line moving across the field. And so if we can define that this player started onside, great. If we feel that the space is a little bit too congested and we're not sure that they're clearly onside, that's the change that World Rugby wants us to make, is instead of justifying that they're offside, we need to start justifying that they're onside. So in a perfect world, to make this picture even better, there's a bit of congestion here. We can get these inside defenders, back another step. Then it erases any doubt that there's offside play, yes and no. And I love that. We see some of the comments in the chat are saying, oh, they never started onside, or oh yes, they started onside. And that's really where we need to be talking about in terms of space. It's not about timing. It's not about debating where the hindmost foot is. It's about saying, okay, are we happy with the standard of what onside looks like? So John, I'll chuck it over to you. Do you have anything to add in terms of space and starting onside?
Sorry, I was talking to myself. I was muted. No, not really. I think you covered it with this one. Like, this is it'd be pretty, actually, if you look at this, is a good example of, the team is connecting on the pillars, because just the pillars are slightly offside. If you go by the letter of law, they're not at the hind foot. They're, especially the blindside pillar, he's halfway up the ruck at the back of the body. So, maybe that would get called by the ref assistant or someone else if he was a bit more active there. But again, like, it's one of those ones you want to be consistent, then you have to draw a line somewhere, and the hind foot should be the hind foot.
100%. And that's the piece where, we come to the officiating standpoint, is then we have to apply the lens of, materiality of, like, okay, it's reasonably quick ball. Are they shutting down options? Because sometimes as referees, we go, oh, they're going to the right. The guy was on the left. He's fine. But then we go, oh, what's the game we really want to have? What do people want to achieve? How do people have fun? Well, they need space to be able to do it on both sides of the ball. So if 9 it has the awareness to have a look up to the left and maybe an opportunity for a snipe, and it's taken away by this guy over here, then then we've got to honor that. So on the one standpoint, and this is why it's quite fun to officiate the game of rugby and to coach it and to play it, is we do live in the gray, but we got to make sure we're asking the right questions. If we're talking about the shooter in particular, well, he clearly starts after the hindmost feet. We're happy with him. But like, as John just alluded to, like, if we're building from the inside out, players lingering around the base, particularly this player here, if we can get more space from him, then it just takes away all these questions and all these detractors that can take away from the positive play. Because if we look at the player who's worked really hard to get all the way back on side and rush up and do something positive and take space, that can be tarnished by someone who just hasn't done the work, which is that pillar on this side here who's standing on in an offside position. So referees, let's work hard to get those pillars on side, and coaches and players, let's just be aware, is if we can get our inside players active on their feet and on side, it makes it so much easier for the players outside them to know what's going on, and for them to feel confident. And at the end of the day, if they feel confident and understand what's going on, they're going to have more enjoyment.
Kenny, you have a question, Kenny? Are you muted?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to go back to something Chris said at the beginning of this clip about starting on side. So I just want to clarify, are you saying as long as we start on side but even leave early, that's okay?
Sorry, yeah, no, again, Kenny, it's about clear and obvious, right? So if you leave half a second early and you've clearly started on side, if it's a question of, we're talking about milliseconds, you'll always get the benefit of the doubt if you start clearly on side, if that makes sense.
Well, it doesn't, because that's offside to me. If you leave early, you're offside. That's how I view it.
You just said to me, which means that it's clear to you, right? So if something's clear,
he was offside there to me.
Yeah, if it's clear, if he's clearly offside, are you speaking to like in this clip or just in general?
Well, I mean, in general, this clip, I think he's offside. I said the ref didn't call it, so play on, but I was kind of being facetious there. Like I think he's offside here, but
okay.
In the general sense, it doesn't make sense to me that you're saying I can leave early, even though I started on side.
No, I get it, Kenny, but I will challenge you, and in this, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So making a timing decision, which is like someone's leaving early, that's actually quite a big decision, because that's you're saying as an official that for a fact that their timing was incorrect. So if we go back to the letter of the law, when's the ball of the ruck? It's when the ball's off the ground. So let's look at this player, can you see my cursor there?
Yeah.
Okay. So right now he's clearly onside. Yeah. Still onside. Are we happy that the ball's been lifted now?
I was actually looking at a different player previously.
Which player were you?
I had thought the guy in front of him, that the guy that he comes through next to, didn't quite make it back, but he left earlier.
100%. Actually, and Kenny, when I looked at this clip initially, this player is this guy you're talking about?
Yeah, I thought he barely made it back, but left early.
I'm happy with that. Is if we're talking about this guy here,
I think the other guy's onside.
100%. And that's the thing about the shooter, is sometimes the shooter is totally genuine, but if there's players that are in and around him that are still adding to the pressure, well, we still need to deal with that. What we mean by, if there's doubt about timing, if timing's really, really close, we're talking about this player. So if we can remove this player for a second out of the equation, and we're talking about, this player, and we're going, I'm not sure if this guy's lifted the ball or not at this stage, which here he is. We're telling referees that if we know he started clearly onside, which he came from here. So I'll let it play through.
I agree with that.
It's mainly a referee trigger, Kenny. It's not to say that we want to encourage teams to shut down space early. It's that we don't want referees to guess. What do we know?
Nobody does.
He's clearly onside. Say again? Yeah, well, yeah, no.
So my next question was going to be, the follow-up was, you deem him the guy coming onside. That's fine. I agree with that timing. The guy next to him was sort of flirting with it there. So if that guy next to him starts to assist tackle, do you call that back and call him offside?
I think you have to, Kenny, because it goes back to John's point. Actually, I never even looked at this side of the ruck until John brought it up.
Yeah, he's offside for sure.
100%. And sometimes we say like, Kenny, and as a coach and as a player, and we've had this discussion, UI and other people many times. It's it's not material. Well, if he shuts down options or creates pressure, or like you say, gets involved as an assist tackler, well, that becomes material. So I think we can make this a whole lot less ambiguous if we're the white team here. And let's say we don't get penalized and we're in film review and we say, hey, this guy here, you just work that extra 1% harder and you start from here, and it clears up this whole picture of doubt about being onside, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. And again, for me personally, I like to consider that, offside line as an onside line. Are the players clearly onside rather than, are we justifying if they're offside or not? So no, I love the line of thinking. And as long as we can get on the same page in terms of space can be a good thing for both teams. It can give the defense an opportunity to get momentum. And obviously it can give the attack space to, do what they're entitled to do. We're going to get a better product and people are going to enjoy, the rugby a little bit more. If that makes sense. So just conscious of time, I know we're 2 minutes over, but we'll come up with the last bit just from a content point of view. So if I can just stop my screen share and I will reactivate it again. So the last piece, and if you've watched any of the rugby from the weekend, either domestically or internationally, there's obviously a big emphasis on that, limiting contact with the head and the head contact process. And there have been some decisions and non-decisions, from referees and TMOs that have come under scrutiny. And again, at the community level and in BC, although we're very lucky to have, clubs that do excellent job with video, we still have to make decisions in real time as players, as referees, as coaches. This is the piece that I really wanted to highlight with, our community before we head into the second half of the season is, are we really comfortable with, what the head contact process looks like and what we can be doing in order to maximize the safety of everyone involved. So again, this is the key piece of foul play. Number one, it's that high tackle or that head contact process. And what we're looking for is just making sure that we're, using our arms and we're below the shoulder line. And from a refereeing point of view, are we clear on that point of contact? Are we clear what the contact is with, whether it's with the shoulder, whether it's an arm, whether it's a hand, and move from there. So I will show you all 3 different clips, and I'll show you the first one. And what I'm going to ask you to do in the chat is just to type in a couple of words. What decision would you give? Would you give a penalty? Would you give a yellow card? Would you give a red card? Or if you're a coach who's really into tackle technique, biomechanics, is there anything that jumps out at you in terms of a coaching point or a cue? So here's clip number 1. And I will just, I'll just stop that there. I'm going to put that in the chat as well, just in case you wanted to stop and start it at your own pace. Okay. All right, here we go. Clip 1. Show it to everyone one more time, and then I'll ask you to fire your thoughts into the chat. Sorry, I just realized I only sent that link to John, so I just sent it to everyone in the chat. If you want to have a look at your own pace, but I'll put it on my screen right now. So I will bring up a couple of things as some of you wait to answer. There we are. So what's important here in terms of head contact is, the point of contact. And again, in a moment, John, I'm sure will weigh in with what we can do from a playing and coaching perspective. But what we're looking for in terms of, the public and, officials especially, is the first thing is that point of contact. So we have to be in a position to see where the contact occurs, and there's contact. That's what a tackle is. There has to be contact. So there's going to be contact. We just have to observe where it initiates and where it ends up. So that's point number one, is where's the point of contact. Number two is what's leading the contact. So is it the arm, the hand, the forearm, the elbow, the shoulder, or the head? As we saw in the weekend's rugby, there was a head-on-head clash that was, in some people's views, quite controversial. Then only then we look at the level of danger. So whether it's low, which is defined as not really much force, and a good indication is you watch the head of the person taking the contact, head doesn't really move, then the danger is not really high. High danger, you see the head move back. And then we look at, is it avoidable, otherwise known as mitigation? So either sudden changes in height, speed, or angle. And just in a layman's terms is, could the player making the contact have adjusted in any way, shape, or form? So keeping that in mind, let's look through this collision again. So we see a ball carrier and a tackler, both quite upright. So we know that there's going to be a point of contact on the upper body. And we look at the contact point here, which, we can see the head and neck. There's no clear head and neck contact. We see the contact is with an arm, the arm's bracing the body. There's nothing in law that says you have to make a grasp with both arms. He's obviously been half stepped. So we see a grasp here, and the contact ends up riding up at the last second, but the player releases. And we see that the ball carrier actually is able to get into a dominant position. So we don't really have clear head and neck contact. We don't really have a high degree of danger if we did have that. And even though this collision was taken from 2 years ago, referees and coaches, we all looked at this clip with the old framework, and we all said, oh, well, penalty because. Well, now we have that area where we can justify play on, because the player has come in, he's made contact on the chest, he's used his arm, and just before he slides up to the head area, he releases his grasp on the player. So there's absolutely no foul play by the modern definition. However, in community rugby, if someone, especially age grade rugby, if someone were to blow their whistle and penalize this action, I would have no problem with that in the slightest. But we do see some positives here, is the player is able to, at the last second, get himself into a slightly lower body position, grasp with the arms, and the ball carrier is able to look after himself. So that's clip number one. I do appreciate the comment from from Kenny as well, our RE Tactics. So clip number 2, a bit of a different one. I'll have you have a look at that. But again, I will bring back the points of emphasis here is what you're going to look at before we watch this clip is we're going to look at the point of contact. So we're going to work hard in real time to really isolate. Okay, let's look at the upper body of the person carrying the ball, or the tackler, because in our last clip you'll see the head contact process applies on both sides of the ball, and you're going to be looking for direct or indirect contact with the head or neck. We're going to be looking for what that contact's initiated with, whether it's a hand, an arm, a forearm, an elbow, a shoulder, or a head. Then we're going to look at the level of danger. And again, guideline words are, if it's low force, you'll see the head really doesn't move backwards or any sudden jolts. With higher degree of danger, we're going to see the head snap back, generally speaking. And again, if it's avoidable, we're looking for any sudden changes of height, so the ball carrier slips and falls, or there's a change in speed. Someone gets, pushes the tackler, or a change in angle. Someone bumps into somebody and it changes the picture completely. And those are only to consider after you've seen the point of contact. So in the moment, we're looking for point of contact. What is the contact with, and how severe is that contact if we do see that there is foul play? Here we go, clip 2. All right, so when you can, let's start typing those thoughts. So again, not necessarily decisions, but what are you noticing? Are there any coaching points to be had in this collision involving these two players? Okay. Yeah. So again, I'm not so concerned about what the actual outcome is, but I love the reasons why. So again, let's go back to what really matters here, because there's everything everyone's saying is all valid. It's just what order in which do we take those facts into consideration? What actually matters? So let's go back and look at those key questions. And again, in your resources I sent you, you can look at the full version of the head contact process, which has all of the language, all of the key questions. I've just tried to boil it down to make sense at the community level. And honestly, even as a high performance referee, I need to do this for my benefit, because if you try to memorize a 4-page PowerPoint, you're not necessarily looking to set yourself up for success in the heat of the moment. So what we're looking at, point of contact. So let's go back and look at our point of contact. So as we see number 4 around the corner from Nanaimo, yeah, we have a pretty clear point of contact. So point of contact is, although we see one player's head here, we see the primary contact being the head. So the strapping kind of helps us see that. So if our point of contact is the head, we asked direct or indirect. In this equation, if we're debating, oh, I'm not sure if that's direct or not, well, let's move to the next part of the question, because then it might guide our decision making. Because again, common sense should rule the day. So what is the contact using? When we talk about using the hand, we're more talking about a fend off, so it's not that. An arm is usually an attempt to grasp. A forearm, that's usually in a someone fending someone off motion. An elbow, again, so shoulder. If it's not an arm attempting to grasp, if it's not a bicep coming across or a swinging arm, it's a shoulder. Even if the player was trying to attempt to grasp, doesn't matter if they're trying to grasp or they're not trying to grasp. If they've made contact with the leading shoulder, it's a shoulder charge. They've made that by definition. A shoulder charge does not mean your arm is tucked in. A shoulder charge means the primary point of contact was your shoulder and you failed to grasp the player with your arm afterwards. So again, it's not about what the player is trying to do, it's about the facts. Judicial, the people that decide how long people sit out for, they look into all those other factors like intent. Players, coaches, referees.
I don't know what they have. Yeah.
We just need to look at what
another minute.
We just need to look at what actually happened. Degree of danger. Let's look at that once more. Yeah, like I said, the best definition I've ever heard of high danger is the head snapping back. And here we can see, if we watch the head of the ball carrier, it snaps back. So it's very hard to see this as anything other than high danger. So if we stop right there, we gather the facts. There's been contact with the head. Yes. The contact was to the shoulder. Yes. And it's high degree of danger. Yes. Then we look, was the contact avoidable? Any mitigation? At the community level, unless the player literally fell before the contact, we're not really looking to consider mitigation at all, because we get one look at it. There's no TMO. But again, if you wanted to look at this from a high performance perspective with TMO, this player is doing everything we want. He's running with his chest parallel to the ground. This player actually explodes up into the contact, which is not something we want to see in a tackler. And yeah, just again, make it simple on ourselves. I don't want to get too much into the decision-making piece. And again, I am conscious of time. And again, these pieces will be emailed to everyone. But again, it's more about what we can do to avoid these pictures. So, good tackle technique. We talked about going back to the tackler not being in the way. That started with footwork. That started with being close. And a lot of those pieces, the piece John shared about tackle ready, that will not only solve our problem for not getting penalized at the breakdown and the post tackle, that will solve our problems for, people making contact with people's heads. Generally speaking, accidents happen. I get it. But again, the more we can be on the same page on the work that's done on the ground before we make contact, the less, debate and strife and injuries we'll have at that point of contact. So, and again, I say that because that was a piece that has come up this fall. Through the divisions, we have had players with head injuries. We have had yellow cards, red cards, and we have had some inconsistency on the application of those decisions from an officiating point of view. So how can we make it easy for ourselves, getting on the same page of, let's just make sure we're aware of the point of contact and what that contact looks like. And yeah, let's make sure that we can make players, coaches, and officials aware of how important it is to do the work ahead of time so that we can minimize those pieces of foul play. John, anything to add in terms of point of contact, tackle technique?
Yeah, really the only thing I had to add even to tonight beyond your clips, because I think they're good clips, with the stuff that you sent out around the trial laws is really good. There's lots of good examples in there for coaches to be creative with in terms of using that as an opportunity piece more than anything. But the reason I wanted to get on here and what I'll be pushing through our coaching channels as we go forward is really the use of that tackle ready passport on World Rugby that's there. It's excellent. It's got whether you were coaching intro or even minis, there's those drills and some of the habit forming little pieces around footwork that he starts with is critical to be a good effective tackler. And it's really about finishing on top, and it doesn't mean not necessarily on top of the person that's being tackled, but on finishing on top, on your feet and getting back on top of the ground. So on your feet, for me, is a key one to either contest or just to not draw penalties. So, I'd really encourage you to use that. It's got some good foundational drills that you can use, again, whether it's an elite level or intro level, and especially for the intro level, because it'll really help build confidence. There's way too much time, even in these videos, we're looking at the end piece, and we should be looking at the footwork to get us there, right? Because the footwork is everything. If you don't have footwork, you're not going to make tackles. If you don't have footwork, you're not going to make safe tackles. So you need that footwork to be confident. And the good news about that is you can do a lot of fun stuff with footwork and tracking. You can build attack at the same time, but you also don't have to do a lot of contact to become a better tackler or contact team. So it's a critical piece, and that's the only thing I wanted to add.
No, that's awesome, John. And yeah, I just put that in the chat as well. It's in everyone's emails too. No, it's an excellent resource, and yeah, it's simple, and it gives us a good base or foundation, pardon the pun, from the footwork to get started off. So again, just before we go, just going back to that safety, speed, and space, that World Rugby's been throwing at us. What does that mean from our community? It boils down to, like John says, like the better we make tackles, the more, we're in good positions to not only make that point of contact safer and more effective, but we're not in the way. It also clears room for better quality jackal versus clean out. The more that stage is clear, the more space everyone has to put their feet in order to, do what they need to do to get into a strong position to lift the ball, or to get into a strong position to remove a threat. Space, defenders starting clearly on side, it actually creates space for both sides, and it creates good momentum for that connectivity and line speed, which is that word that we hear thrown around an awful lot in modern rugby. And again, more awareness around the point of contact, use of arms, strong body position, which I guess, John, you boiled down to footwork, which is awesome, will create more player confidence. And again, John DeBoer, another phrase that you said before, just a bit more enjoyment from everyone, a bit more, if everyone feels like they know what they're doing, they'll enjoy the rugby a little bit more, and it will be a positive experience for everyone. So that being said, again, I'm sorry for being over time, everyone, but I will send the recording out. The resources are all sent to your emails. Thanks for your time this evening. Thank you, John, and we hope to see you on the field sometime soon.
Yeah, thanks everybody, and thanks Chris for going through that stuff. It's helpful reminders, even if you were pretty certain on it before. Somebody asked some questions about the drop goals out from the goal line. The video link that's put there on the World Trials, I think there's about 15 different videos, and at least 4 or 5 of them deal with different ways to exit off the goal line with deep kicks, short kicks, etc. So that's what I was referring to about getting creative. You know, like I watched those again the other day. I thought I knew everything, and I didn't. So I'd encourage them, everybody, to look through those again, because there's some real opportunity there to catch teams out who aren't prepared for it.
100%, and yeah, that creativity is yeah, it only makes the game better, and it makes it more interesting to spectate and officiate and to play. So yeah, and again, my email and John's email is available on the website. I know we're always happy to chat, so if any of you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And yeah, we hope to see you soon.
Great, guys. Have a good night, everyone. Thank
Thanks.
you. Feel free to email, like Chris said. Happy to answer.